Hello, we're the Lorcana Twins, and we're back with another video. This time we're going to be diving into the set championships for Shimmering Skies and how our first weekend of them went.
That's right. The set championship season is in full swing now, and last weekend was the first time to compete for these new round of prize cards. And we did compete in two events last weekend. It was a lot of fun. So just to start things off, I will say that I managed to take first place in both of the events that we did, and my brother had a very successful top four in both events as well. So it went way better than we could have hoped for. And
Yeah, I will say that was my first time top fouring at any of these, so that was very cool to do it in both. And for you to win both, that was really crazy. Congrats on that. But yeah, we're going to get into the list we played and kind of just a little about our experience in general. So to kick things off,
all right, you can start off with what you played on Saturday.
yeah, I've always loved Amber Steel. I played it in Vegas, so I have a lot of recent experience on the deck. So I decided to start off with that one, and pretty standard. I went with the 4 Cindy, of course, and the 4 Robin Hood. And I went with 1 Daisy just to be a little aggressive. I know when I was in the mirror match, Daisy seemed pretty good, so don't love the uninkableness, and I, cringe at the idea of giving the opponent any extra cards, but if you can combine, Whole New World with a nice curve, it doesn't matter if you've given them some cards, you'll just Whole New World them away. But a couple Piglet in case I hit any red-blue for that aggressive start. A couple Ursula as well, because I love the Singer ability, especially to be able to sing an early Zeus if that's really critical or removes an important character off the board. Smee, amazing statted 2-drop, so 4 of him. 4 Ariel, that's really standard. And then Lawrence, I think, has been really nice against purple decks, or especially non-steel decks, but even against steel decks can pack quite a punch. And then Pete, 3 Pete, I think 4 Pete would be just fine too, and I would probably go up to 4 after the event, but it's hard to fit everything in. And then I love the Naveen card. He just seems very strong, very tempo-oriented. Sometimes you get kind of bricked up and you might have a Whole New World in hand and no way to sing it, but if you have a Naveen in hand, you can just play him and Whole New World in one go, and that's really powerful.
That is an amazing combo.
And also just maybe you have curved out perfectly and you play Naveen on 4, and you combine it with Strength of a Raging Fire and deal 4 to an opposing character. That can be really strong too. So then you have Rapunzel, another staple, and 4 of the Sheriff of Nottingham Robin Hood. Tried 2 Tinkerbell in this build, which I don't think she came into play a whole lot, but just the potential there to kind of stall some opponents out a little bit if they don't want to quest in her face, was very nice. And to combine it with the swords, or maybe you've, pinged a character for 2 with Let the Storm Rage On, and she could just be that 3rd point of damage when you play her to finish something off. So I do think that's very nice against some matchups. And then 2 of the Cinderella Shift line, I think she's very strong, and I would probably go up to 3 after this event. World's Greatest Criminal Mind, I played 1 just in case you get against, a mirror match and they are able to stick a big Cindy or maybe a Tamatoa or something like that. It can also come in handy against even the 3-drop Sisu that gets stronger based on the number of cards in your opponent's hand. But really, I only casted it 1 time in the entire event, and I probably would have rather had a Bare Necessities or something to interact with the opponent's hand, because a couple of the matches where I struggled, it was due to locations. So maybe to be able to snipe a castle out of the opponent's hand would have been more important. And then 4 Storm Rage On, 4 Strength of Raging Fire, 3 Zeus, and 4 Whole New World, of course, because it's a steel song, and that's just so powerful to sing that and get a whole new hand. And 2 Grab Your Swords. I know with the recent success of the Emerald Steel deck with ward characters like Prince John, I just wanted to have some way to deal with that type of a character and just not give them free reign to sit on the board all game long. So
that makes sense.
It's the main reason I had that in there. And yeah, overall it was very fun. I saw some interesting matchups, an Emerald Steel, a Ruby Steel Control, and then some Ruby Amethyst. So yeah, a good blend there. And I made it to the top 4, and then I took on a Ruby Amethyst deck there. And in game 1, I got to 18 lore, and was feeling pretty good about that. But then they were able to hold me to 18 for about 6 more turns after that, which was pretty crazy. But, kudos to them. It's very well played. And then I just kind of got buried under a castle in that game. Then I won game 2, and then game 3, it was back and forth, pretty close. But then kind of ran out of my hand and A to be prepared, and then they dropped a castle that I couldn't answer, and that really accelerated their card draw and closed the game out. So, but it was a lot of fun. And then my opponent went on to take on my brother in the final. So we will take a look at your deck right now.
Well, I chose to play Ruby Amethyst for this first one. I always like the consistency that Ruby Amethyst brings. Like, I feel pretty comfortable on it. But this time I played a 61 card deck, which I normally do not like to do. I like to stick to 60, but I really just was having a hard time cutting down on everything I wanted to include. So I just kind of went with it.
Didn't seem to hurt you at all.
It really didn't. I love the for the one drops. I love Chernobog's Followers and the Magic Broom. Just any way to like get additional card draw going when you need it is really beneficial. I did have the Snake and the Flynn as options you could play on turn 2, but I really wanted to have more than just four potential 2-drops to play, because I at a previous set champ in set 4, there were some games where even with 8 1-drops. If you don't find them, and then if you only find your Snake, you're really not doing anything until turn 3. And I just did not want to run into that scenario here.
Yeah, the tempo just seems so important in the current meta, so.
It does. So I threw in a couple Pegasus, which I thought could also help with Diablos if he was, kind of popular right now. And so I also like Pegasus just into other, let's say, Ruby Amethyst matchups. If they're not really playing evasives until maybe a turn 5 Elsa, you can get some nice questing in there. And it's also kind of good against locations, because if they try to drop a castle on you, all it takes is 1 crab and Pegasus hits for 7. So, he can remove that on curve. And then, so for 3 drops, I'm a huge fan of the crabs, so I decided to run 3 of that. The standard 4 Madame Mim Fox and the 4 Sisu to combo nicely with Flynn. That really did come in handy. I was against a couple blue-red decks that day, and some of them got really close in the end, but it certainly helped in the early game to get some lore off the Flynn Sisu combo. Then for 4 drops, I went with the 4 Goat and 4 Rabbit, pretty standard there. I'm a huge fan of the new Elsa, so I even wanted to play like 4, but I also thought, her 2/5 stat line against some red decks isn't the best after a certain point. And, sometimes, like, against blue-red, you're probably not really tapping anything down of too much value other than maybe a Hiram, with that. And by that point, they've probably ramped a bunch and can get into their Tamatoas and stuff. So I didn't go full out on this, but I did want 3, especially, in case there's hyper aggro, or it helps against Steel Song as well to have a way to tap down some of their singers that you can remove. 2 Maui, I don't know, I started with 4, and I wasn't finding space, and I figured, with the extra rush from Elsa and with 3 crabs, maybe I would have enough damage with foxes as well to kind of deal with locations if they came in. And then I still wanted a couple Maui, though. He's nice taking out Tinkerbells or other big steel characters and things like that.
And sometimes characters just aren't exerted, and then he feels kind of bad, and he also can't quest. So I kind of like the direction of, trimming him down a little bit for some extra else.
Decided to give that a try, and I was pretty pleased with it. I still felt like I found him when I needed him, and so, it was nice to have him in the deck, but maybe he doesn't need to be a 4 all of the time. I went with 1 Lady Tremaine, which really did come in handy too against some of the blue decks. I was able to remove a Tamatoa with Tremaine and a Hiram one time after a Be Prepared, when that was kind of all they had left. So that really helped out keeping their board clear. And then Medusa, I feel like she's always really good. Still a lot of 3 strength and less characters that are good to remove in this meta. I went with 1 of the big Sisu as just a different type of board clear in case there was a lot of like Pete and Ursula too running around that might be taking your Be Prepareds or stopping you from playing them. So I got Sisu out a couple of times, and one time it was pretty good, but in that game I felt like I was already in a good spot, so it wasn't a huge deal, but it was just nice to know it was in the deck and can shift on top of the smaller one as well. And then 4 Friends, and I went with 3 Brawl, because I think Brawl is really important for Diablo. I kind of wanted 4 as well, but sometimes it feels like a bad card, and sometimes you'd rather just play some characters out there, so cut it down to 3, and then 3 Be Prepared and 4 Castle. And overall, I was really loving how it was playing.
Yeah, it looks like a solid list.
Yep.
So you were able to secure the champ mat with that, and that's a very good start. Kind of takes the pressure off, I guess, going forward if you're really hoping to win one of those.
It did. It was nice to get a win right off the bat and just know, I can just have more of a relaxed approach to the rest of the set championships that we go to. But I still always get really anxious, kind of anxious, and I still want to perform well, but
sure.
Just it was nice to kind of get the first one out of the way and have some success.
So then going into the next one, I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll try a different deck at each event, and so far I have. We'll see if I continue that or not, but I decided to try Green Steel or Emerald Steel for the second event. So I decided to just run with Zan Saeed's list. He won with this list at the DLC, the challenge in Las Vegas. So, I'm sure like it's an amazing list and thought I would practice it a little bit and then take it to the event. So I ran with it and it was a lot of fun, I will say, for me at least. And I think my first matchup was into blue purple, so maybe that's a little favorable for me. They did have some good tech cards in there to try to deal with the matchup, but the ward can really hurt for them, not really having a way to interact with that. So I was able to 2-0 that and then moved on to Ruby Sapphire for the second round, and that was very close. I mean, all three games we were, right there neck and neck, and it was down to the wire. Was able to take it down in that third game, and then I moved on to face Ruby Amethyst, and again that was a very close grindy matchup. I think really came down to trying to keep their hand empty so they'd be unable to cast Be Prepared, and they were eventually able to get one off, but at that point I had drawn probably 14 cards off of Diablo that just went unanswered, so I was able to grind it out from there, and it was actually so grindy that we ran out of time on our second game, and I was just one turn off from questing for the win in that one too, and then they top deck Be Prepared, it was kind of exciting, but we were on turns anyway, so it didn't matter, so ended up getting that win as well, and then eventually made it on into the top cut, and then went to the top 8, and I got to play against the Mufasa deck, and I don't know, they had some unfortunate draws, and I think I really was just popping off and getting kind of the crazy, amazing draws you'd hope for. And it worked out really well in my favor for that, and was able to move on to the top 4, where I faced another Ruby Amethyst and got the first game. It was feeling pretty good. I was able to shift Morph into the Beast right on turn 3 and just know that they really would have no answer for that for, quite a few turns. So I got to draw a lot off of that, which really set up the Prince John engine and got me a lot of discard cards to then, strip their hand and keep filling mine. And but then game 2, again, it was grindy. There was a turn where they dropped a castle, and I decided to put 3 damage into it and then drop in a big tink to hopefully clear it next turn. And then I did, but after that I did eat a Be Prepared, and I wasn't quite able to recover from that. And then game 3, again, very close. There was one turn where if they didn't have Be Prepared, I thought I'd kind of have it in the bag, but they had it, and then kind of redeployed. At one point I had 2 more Tragic Hero Beasts on the board and dropped a Pete, and they only had 1 card left in hand. And so I think they played a Rabbit, and then the next turn I got to draw 3 extra cards, or 3 cards total, 1 for turn and 2 off each beast, and didn't find a Pete or an Ursula or a way to discard the last card, and they got another Be Prepared, which really kind of wrecked my chances a little bit there, but tried one last, Hail Mary effort. I threw out a Prince John and a Diablo, and then they had a Brawl for the Diablo, so I never got to draw off that again either, and then I kind of got buried under a castle again, but it was a lot of fun. Very nice opponent, and once again, so I ended top 4, and my opponent went on to play my brother.
I was kind of hoping I would get to play you, even though I did not want to play against this deck.
It would have been pretty epic, though,
just
to get to take you on.
Because we've never actually had to play each other in the finals of anything yet. So it was lining up, it was right there.
Maybe next time, but I don't know. It seems like the stars would really, really have to align for that. But we'll take it away then with your list.
So I decided to play Amber Steel, something I've wanted to play for a long time, and I have not got around to this deck since maybe like set 1 or 2. But I was pretty excited to just try out some of the new cards in it, and I decided to build mine kind of differently from what I've seen lately. Specifically, I wanted to play the Queen.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of that lately.
So I put the Queen in there on both the 1 cost and the 5 cost shift line. And the other weird thing I decided to do was just only play 3 of each of the Queen and 3 of the Little Robin Hood, and then I did the same with their shift targets, so I played 3 of each. I guess my thinking for that was I've experienced before where a deck like this, at a certain point, if you're just top decking and you keep finding your 1 cost unit that doesn't do anything to the board state, that kind of feels bad, and so I didn't want there to be just an overabundance of that type of character in here. And I figured, maybe if you just mulligan aggressively, and you find one of the two, you might keep that and hope to find the other shift line. But the other thing I love about this deck is I don't even think throughout the whole day that I ever went with like a shift whole new world. I basically tried to play, if I had it, a Cinderella on one, and then my preferred line was to go into a Smee. But if I was playing going second, then I like the Ursula so that she can sing some removal from on turn 3, and then usually I would like to stick maybe a Pete on turn 3 as well, so that because Ariel a lot of the times against red decks she can get brawled right away, and then your singer is gone that you hope to sing with next turn. But if you just play Pete first, there's most of the removal spells in this deck cost 3, so your 3-drop character can actually sing them. And then next turn, if you do have that Ariel, you can play her and find an additional option possibly, and then use Pete to sing some removal. Lawrence also, I was a huge fan of Lawrence, so I put him at 4. I just find like a lot of characters that people play on turns 2 to 3 do not stack well into his stat line, so it gives you possibly a nice value trade, and then it curves out perfectly into Rapunzel on turn 4, so you can heal him up and draw cards if they gave you a trading opportunity. And if they don't, it almost lets you suddenly become the aggressor. You can usually quest Lawrence, in the face of the enemy board, and if he does get taken out, it's usually taking something with it. So that feels very nice. I went with 4 Naveen, and I think I only have 16 songs in this list, which isn't as much as some people play, but I feel like the most important ones are the damage removal ones, and then of course the whole new world. I did run 1 copy of Bare Necessities, just as like a 5th template, kind of like a Pete effect. If there's something they play in their deck that might kind of ruin your chances of winning, sometimes just playing Bare Necessities, you can find that and kind of get rid of the problem. So good against Be Prepared or other removals. I know though I used it a couple times. It never felt like super great, but I did get rid of a castle with it once, and it's just nice to know you don't have to sit there and wonder when the castle's coming down, because I think though the queen does help deal with castles a little better than the versions that don't use it. I found that pretty helpful. And also like against hyper aggro decks, I played against one in round 1, and it was nice using her to quest at the same time as you can pump something strength up and take out the library. And that was because the hyper aggro was going really fast, so I felt like I had to be questing fast too at the same time while trying to remove a lot of their things. And both games they got to like 16 or 17 lore, but I just found enough removal to kind of keep them off the win. But overall, I really thought this deck was a lot of fun to play. It just kind of felt like my games were going super smooth, and even if you're not finding songs, there's like with the Smees and Lawrences and Naveens, there's a lot of like there's a lot of 2 lore questers. I think there's about 26 or so characters in the deck that quest for at least 2, something like that. So it felt really nice to usually you can put a lot of threats down, and then if you can clear their board, like once you start turning everything sideways, you really start getting to 20 fast. And then Pete came in huge handy multiple times, because in one game against a Ruby deck, I played back-to-back Petes right before they were going to 7 ink, and they did have a Be Prepared, but they were just unable to play it, so my board was too wide and I was able to quest out. And I had a lot of fun. I think my first round was against Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggro, and I was able to 2-0 that, but it was very close. And then, and I know I'm a bad matchup for them, so that was just kind of lucky for me to get that matchup. Then the second match, I was against Ruby Amber Mufasa deck, and that one, it seemed like it could get challenging for sure. But I felt like I was drawing everything I needed to kind of answer the characters they were putting down and prevent some card draw with Rapunzel and stuff like that. And then for the third round, I played against Amber Steel, and their deck was more aggressive with a lot of daisies and lanterns, and they were at 16 lore in the first game, and I was at 0, and then I managed to come back and prevent them from getting any additional lore. But their hand just they got unlucky because they kind of ran out of ink and had to ink a couple turns and not do anything, and I was able to come from behind with some singers and a lot of songs.
And then they had to do the dreaded, paying 5 for a whole new world.
Yeah, so that was unfortunate for them. And then, game 2 went a little better, I thought. I think they had a really good hand, but I played Pete on turn 3, and it stopped them from singing Whole New World with Ariel. And then from there, I was able to use my songs to kind of remove their board, and that ended up resulting in them needing to pay for their Whole New World that Ariel had found on turn 3 as well eventually. And so that was kind of unfortunate for them, but very fun game, nice player. And
How about in Top Cut? What did you take
then
on?
after that, in the top cuts, my first matchup was against a Sapphire Amethyst deck,
Okay.
and that seemed very nicely built. And I think maybe the Amber Steel is kind of a counter to that if I find enough removal. And that first game, I think I played Naveen into Whole New World like about 4 times in a row. Like I always found another Whole New World, so I kept having like pretty much endless removal at my disposal. And it got a little interesting towards the end when they dropped a big Ursula, and I couldn't sing any of my songs.
That's what Naveen can be good against that as well, because you're not singing it when you play Naveen. So,
but as it turned out, I was able to 2-0 that, and then I moved on to the top 4, where I played against a friend that we have seen at a lot of these set champs up in the area where we typically travel for these. And they were on Ruby Amethyst, and I knew that it can be a very tight matchup, but I felt like my deck was maybe slightly favored into that, especially with some Lawrence, and we had quite a battle. It was pretty epic and very grindy, but I managed to 2-0, so that was satisfying. And then in the end, I was hoping to see Aaron, but I faced his opponent instead, who was also on a Ruby Amethyst build. And the difference with their build, I think they were running some Super Goofy, and that actually helped me out because when Super Goofy would rush in, it would stay exerted, and then I was able to hit into him with a Smee or a Lawrence and then use Rapunzel to draw cards. And in that matchup, I just got to a point where my hand size was pretty good compared to my opponents, and so I never really had to rely on the Whole New World combo. And one of those games was where I played 2 Petes back to back to kind of seal it off. And
so I know that Steel Song maybe underperformed, at the Las Vegas DLC, and that could have led to, a reduction in the amount of them that are being played, but is clearly still a super strong deck. And, if you hit some good matchups, you can have a great day of it. And I know there were, there's maybe an unfavorable matchup in Ruby Sapphire, which there were some there on the day, but I think you managed to avoid all of them, maybe, which is
I did
great.
avoid them. I think some of having the Queen in the deck and all the Lawrences
That could help with that.
helps a bit because they're, unless they have some ice blocks down, Medusa can't get rid of Lawrence or the Queen or this big Cinderella. So and then of course the big Sisu, it only hits 2 strength and less. So as long as you try to keep things in play with more strength than that at a certain point, maybe they're playing less Be Prepared. And so if you can make it so try to play around the Sisu, if you've had an aggressive early game, maybe you can cross the finish line.
I
was glad I didn't have to play that matchup that day because I know it is definitely a challenge, and I played against it quite a bit the previous day and just felt like the Amber Steel might really struggle. But I was pretty pleased with how this deck played, and I would definitely run it back again sometime. It was very fun.
Yeah, and so overall they were just really fun events. I think everyone was, very positive. The vibes were great. And yeah, I think people were just happy to be there and, competing at some, fun Lorcana with a little extra prizing on the line. And so that was really cool to see, and a lot of top tier players at the events. So yeah, we're looking forward to the next ones. It's actually Friday night right now, so we're signed up for another one tomorrow morning, and I have yet to decide what I'm playing, so that'll be the next task here. It's pretty typical us to be a little last minute. We might also do an event on Sunday, so we'll see, and then we'll probably just report back next week on how that goes. And for now, at least, the last one we're signed up for would be a week from tomorrow, that first Saturday of the 3rd week of these. So I don't know, it'd be exciting to try a different deck at each one just to get a feel, or maybe fall back on one that we're comfortable with at this point, not sure, but I'm sure we'll do a little practicing tonight and go from there. But yeah, we thought we would just end the video with highlighting a few cards from the upcoming set. That'll be exciting when it ever does roll out, Azurite Seas. So we will just take a look at a few of those. So to kick it off, here is Jim Hawkins, Honorable Pirate. He's Dreamborn, Hero, Pirate, and a Captain. He's a 4/7 stat line with a cost of 7. Inkable and can quest for 2, so it's a pretty big statted character. He's got Bodyguard, so yeah, I would think he could protect a lot of characters with that stat line. And then Hire a Crew is his ability. And it says when you play this character, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal any number of pirate character cards and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So right away, it just seems like this would be great for a pirate-centric deck. Maybe Amber Steel Pirates could be a deck in set 6. I think, Smee's a great statted pirate on 2 that you could easily be running 4 of in your deck and just run a bunch of this. And like a lot of the Captain Hooks are in steel. And there's, the John Silver pirate that's in steel. But I guess, you could try this with any color that you want as long as the pirates are lining up. I know even the Emerald, 6-cost John Silver legendary from set 1. If you did an Amber Emerald pirate deck, maybe there could be something there. And I know there's a Pirate Stitch that we might be taking a look at pretty soon here. And yeah, who knows what other pirates they will be releasing in the upcoming set. So
I think if nothing else, this is just a fun build-around card that if you love the idea of playing with pirates, and Jim's a very cool character as well. Like, this seems like a good way to put some card draw into that deck and have a decent top end, bodyguard that can kind of protect the rest of your crew.
Yeah, and I think, if you're building with a ton of pirates, at best, I guess, you could play this, get a nice character that quests for 2, protects your board, and maybe draws you up to 4. So, that would feel pretty good.
Like if your opponent is kind of run out of cards, and if your deck's got a lot of pirates in it, this might give you
them out in the late game.
Some good resource advantage.
So next we have Stitch.
Stitch is an alien buccaneer. He's a 4-cost uninkable, 3 strength, 4 willpower, floodborn hero alien pirate, and he shifts for 3. And he has 2 lore. And his ability, Ready for Action, when you play this character, if you used shift to play him, you may put an action card from your discard on the top of your deck.
Mm-hmm.
So, this seems like it would combo nicely, possibly with like a Diablo deck. I know, a lot of people are playing Morph right now, so you could put this on a Morph, and if they've already shifted Diablo, you've probably discarded an action.
Yep.
It'd be nice to get your action back so you can actually get some value out of playing it again.
Mm-hmm.
So, this would combo nicely with Storm Rage on and, Strength of a Raging Fire.
Yep.
Sudden Chill, the types of things you would discard to shift your Diablo.
Yeah, it does seem like it'd be really good in that scenario. And, maybe you're playing Amethyst Emerald and you've cast, Friends on the Other Side at some point, and maybe you're able to get that back and draw a couple more. And I don't know if the shift lines are quite there yet in these colors for Stitch. We'll have to see what characters or if there's any cheaper Stitches that are released in this upcoming set as well in different ink colors that don't already have like cheaper costed Stitches. But yeah, I think just the ability to get another card back, it's like another form of card advantage. And if it was, already an action that got you some value, it might get you some more. So I think it's pretty cool. And yeah, a lot of different tags that he has with Alien and Pirate and Hero and Floodborn. So a cool card, and he's decently stat in Quest for 2. So.
Seems flexible. He is uninkable, so depending on what deck he's in, you might need to try to make some room for him. But yeah, looking cool so far.
And finally, we will take a look at Yzma, a conniving chemist. She has an ability called Feel the Power, which says you exert her, and then if you have fewer than 3 cards in your hand, draw until you have 3 in your hand. So if you're getting low on cards, maybe this could be good for an aggressive deck. Let's say you are playing your hand down, and then you play her on the board. She can refill your hand up to 3, so you can keep spamming out cheap costed characters, and when you're ready to start questing for the win, you could also just quest her for 2 lore. She costs 4, she's a 3/3, so maybe a little understated for a cost of 4, but she's coming with a great effect and 2 lore, so it seems pretty good actually.
Yeah, I think there's a Amethyst Steel Doc deck right now that is pretty popular, and Doc just being able to draw you 2 cards usually when your hand is empty, or it helps you empty your hand, draw a couple cards to keep your resources flowing. Yzma seems kind of similar, like she could be towards the top end of a deck like that, where if you just are pushing for the lore, to try to win, you can always exert her for 2. However, if you want to use that ability because you're running low on cards and you know you need some more resources to kind of close it out, then you can exhaust her and get the 3 cards to hand, and plus she could be bounced again and replayed.
Yeah.
So you know she's got some flexibility here, and I think card draw always tends to be really strong. You know, you think of like Clarabelle. You know, some people right away last set weren't sure how good that was going to be, and then all of a sudden it was proven like, wow, you know, she can be pretty powerful. And right, I mean, this card right here is basically like a draw 3 just to exert, and you know, if your opponent can't remove her, you can do this every turn as well, so you can just keep playing out your hand.
Yeah, and I could maybe see even in an aggressive like Ruby Amethyst deck, maybe, where you're, you know, playing a lot of cheap characters, and if you're playing LeFou to like restand characters like the 1-cost Maleficent to keep them, you know, protected from being challenged, you could also use her ability and then, you know, play a couple cheap cards, play LeFou to ready her, and then use her ability again to really just keep the pressure going. Or maybe you quest her first and then use LeFou to ready her and draw the cards. You know, just a cool way to, yeah, keep your hand and your resources churning while also being aggressive at the same time.
Yeah, she seems really flexible, and I wouldn't be surprised if this card is actually, you know, a lot more playable and than people might initially
I'm interested to see, because, you know, Clarabelle from this current set has a really good stat line at a 5/6, and there isn't like a cap, like 3 cards that you can draw for her. You know, you might draw more, you might draw less, but you know, and here maybe Yzma's stat line makes her a little more vulnerable to removal, but we'll have to see how much competitive play she ends up seeing. But a cool card nonetheless, and it's always good to have draw options that don't rely on like a song like Friends on the Other Side that could be stolen by, you know, the 2-drop Ursula and things like that.
Yeah, and like this gets around like Pete trying to action cancel someone if, you know, if you were gonna Friends on the Other Side, but you know, maybe you don't want to play Friends if there's a meta where Pete and, you know, Ursula, the 2-drop Ursula that takes songs is really popular. So, you know, using Yzma as a potential form of card draw could be a cool option.
Yep. So that is that. We will probably take a look at a few new cards from the upcoming set in the next video as well, and we'll report back on the set champs of this upcoming weekend. But until then, best of luck to all of you competing in set champs, and, you know, happy questing.
Yes, good luck to everyone, and have fun out there.